Hey guys, what's going on? Branchen Brown here, physical therapist and wellness coach with Get Your Fix Physical Therapy, Get Your Fix Nutrition, CrossFit coach at CrossFit Majestic. Starting a shoulder pain series, I kind of introed it last week. Starting today, I wanted to talk about why we get that pinch pain on the top of the shoulder and sometimes in the front of the shoulder. So when you're going into those overhead positions, whether it be pushing that barbell overhead, so any sort of shoulder to overhead motion, your overhead squats or snatches, as well as your kipping motion on the bar. So any of those positions can cause that pinch pain at the top of that shoulder, sometimes in front of that shoulder when you're up overhead. The question is why? Well, there's a couple different causes to this, or it can be a twofold problem. It can be both. It can just be one. But what happens very frequently is the rotator cuff essentially gets overworked. So it gets fairly tight and compressed in there, and it causes everything to kind of lock down, and it doesn't let that joint glide smoothly. Now, the question is, why does this happen? First off, upper back mobility is a big cause of this, or lack of upper back mobility. So in our upper back, we need a certain amount of extension, so that arching backwards when we reach up overhead. If we don't have that motion, the shoulder muscles have to work harder in order to attempt to get us there. So the stiffer you are in that upper back, the more that shoulder has to work to get you up there. If you are like most people I work with, you are very stiff in that upper back area because you don't work on it. If you do work on it, especially with a foam roller, most likely you aren't doing it correctly. There's a lot of people I see just kind of rolling around on it, just trying to do what they can to loosen it up. It's not overly effective because you're not actually working those joints. So there's kind of a specific way I work it. As we go throughout this series, I will definitely show you that. Now, when it comes to the rotator cuff, basically the rotator cuff is a group of muscles that surrounds that shoulder underneath those bigger muscles. So our deltoid, our biceps, triceps, that's essentially for the most part what moves our shoulder, our lats as well. That rotator cuff, the primary function of it, even though it's called a rotator cuff, the primary function is a stabilizer. So every time we do any motion, that has to kick in order to stabilize that joint as we're moving, especially through these quick motions, especially through these heavy repetitive cycling motions that we do. Now, when that rotator cuff gets tired, that's when it starts tightening up on us. Over long term, as things get fatigued, as things get tight, it just gets tighter and tighter and kind of clamps down. So as it's basically what we find is as it gets tighter, we can't reach up overhead as easily. So we're going less of a range, plus we're really trying to force it through that range, and we get that pinch at the top or in that shoulder. So upper back mobility and rotator cuff tightness, two specific muscles. I usually don't get into the muscle names with you guys just because they're technical names. Overall, for you guys, it doesn't matter. It matters that I know what I'm doing in order to fix it. But essentially, it's muscles here in the back, on top of that shoulder blade, next to that shoulder blade. So if you want to know those specific muscles, feel free to comment on here. I'm happy to tell you. But essentially, just think the rotator cuff. It gets tight. It locks down that shoulder. Doesn't allow us to move as well up overhead. Sometimes too, you'll also notice when you get really tight in there, you don't get into that clean as quickly into that front rack position. So you have difficulty catching that bar quickly and with those elbows up. So let me know if you have any questions on this. Let me know if you have any issues with this. I'd love to have a conversation with you if you're dealing with something specific regarding this. So definitely comment on here with any questions, or if you're dealing with this specifically, or feel free to reach out to me directly through Facebook Messenger. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you regarding this. So hope you had an amazing day today, and I will talk to you later. Bye.